After the surgery, I came home exhausted and found my suitcase sitting outside the door with a note taped to it. Now it's just the three of us. Find somewhere else to stay. Sincerely, your daughter-in-law. Without saying a word, I called the bank and froze every credit card. I'm glad you're here, listening. Stay with me until the end and tell me what city you're in, so I'll know how far my story has traveled. My hands trembled as I read the note again, wishing the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less cruel. The late afternoon sun pressed down on my tired body as I stood there in my hospital gown, staring at the house I had called home for the past 3 years. I knocked. Of course I knocked. I pounded until my knuckles ached, calling Ethan's name over and over. My son, my only son, the boy I raised alone after his father died when he was just 12 years old. But all I got in return was silence, and Jenna's distant voice telling the kids to stay quiet. Finally, the curtain shifted, and I caught a glimpse of my 8-year-old grandson's face before Jenna yanked him away. The curtain fell back, and in that instant I knew they had no intention of letting me in. I sank onto my suitcase, trying to understand what was happening. 3 years earlier, when Harold died, Ethan and Jenna had urged me to sell my house and move in with them. "Mom, it makes perfect sense," Ethan had said. "You'll help us with the kids, and we'll take care of you as you get older. The money from your house will go toward expanding ours." At the time, it had sounded like a wonderful idea. $178,000. That was what I contributed to the renovations of their home. Almost everything you got from selling the house you and Harold paid off over 30 years is an investment in our family, Ethan had promised, and I believed him. I remember so clearly how everything began to change little by little. At first, I was Grandma Nancy, the beloved grandmother making pancakes on Sunday mornings and helping the kids with homework. Then I was just Mom, useful for babysitting and cooking so Jenna could focus on her own routines. And in the end, I was simply Nancy, the inconvenient old woman taking up space in their beautiful home. The change in Jenna was the most obvious. Warm smiles became forced ones. "Thanks for watching the kids," slowly turned into, "That's what grandmothers are for." The family outings disappeared, and I was left behind, nothing more than the babysitter. I pulled my phone from my pocket and called Ethan, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Still nothing. Finally, I left a message. "Ethan, I'm outside the house. I just came out of surgery. Please, let me in." I watched the message switch from delivered to read, but no reply came. Not a word. The sun sank behind the roof, and with it sank the truth of what I was living. I was 68 years old, recovering from gallbladder surgery, with nowhere to go. The hospital had discharged me with instructions to rest at home. But apparently, that home was no longer mine. When the evening chill set in, I finally accepted that no one was coming to open the door. My trembling hands gripped the suitcase handle, and I began to walk. Each step tore at the fresh wounds on my abdomen. I had $43 in my wallet, just enough for a cab. But where would I go? A hotel would swallow that money in a single night. My sister lived 3 states away. My best friend, Diane, had moved into a smaller apartment after her husband died. I sat on a bench at the bus stop, my suitcase beside me. A wave of betrayal crashed over me, and I couldn't hold back the tears. How could Ethan do this to me? The little boy who once gave me glitter-covered cards on Mother's Day. The boy who told me I was his hero. The young man for whom I worked 2 jobs to pay college tuition. My son and Jenna. I had tried so hard with vows. Jenna. I always respected her choices as a mother. Never interfered where I wasn't asked. helped when I was needed. I thought at least we had built mutual respect. But this cruelty wasn't accidental. They waited until I was at my weakest, fresh from surgery, to cast me out. It had all been planned. I was nothing but a babysitter and a source of money until I became a burden. As the streetlights began to flicker, I pulled out my phone, hesitating over Diane's name. We'd been friends for more than 40 years, side by side through marriages, children, and now widowhood. If anyone would understand, it was her. The phone rang 3 times before her familiar voice answered. "Nancy, are you okay?" I tried to speak, but only a sob came out. "Nancy? What happened? Didn't you have surgery today?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "I need help." They left me outside. A short silence, then her voice turned steady. "Tell me where you are. I'm coming right now." As I waited for my best friend to rescue me, I watched a young family pass by. The mother held her son's hand, laughing at something he said. Such a simple moment of connection. And it hit me my own family had cut every tie to me, made me disposable. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing heavier than my suitcase, heavier than all my years. Diane's spare room had little more than a single bed, a small dresser, and a reading lamp. But that night, it was a refuge. My surgical wounds throbbed as Diane helped me settle in. Her face was a mask, barely concealing her rage. "I can't believe Ethan did this. After everything you've done for him." I couldn't believe it either, but the proof was undeniable. That hastily packed suitcase Jenna had thrown together just a few clothes, none of my cherished belongings. It sat in the corner, a witness to this new reality. "Have you tried calling him again?" Diane asked, handing me a cup of chamomile tea. I nodded, clutching the warm cup with trembling hands. "He's read my messages 17 times and hasn't answered once." Diane sat on the edge of the bed, her silver hair shining under the lamp. We had been friends since our 20s, when we were young mothers struggling to balance work and family. She was there when Harold died, and now she was here, as I was being cast out of my son's life. "You need to rest," Diane said firmly. "Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step." But sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jenna's handwriting on that sticky note. Now it's just the 3 of us. The casual cruelty of those words hurt worse than my surgical scars. The next morning it rained. Drops tapped gently against the window. I checked my phone again. No messages from Ethan. No missed calls. Just the silence of abandonment. "Let's get some breakfast," Diane called from the door. "Then we'll talk about what to do next." Over coffee and toast, I told her everything. How I sold my house to help Ethan and Jenna. How they turned a modest 3-bedroom home into a 5-bedroom, 4-bath house with a chef's kitchen and a master suite. I invested $178,000. I stirred my coffee, not daring to look up. Ethan said it was an investment in our future together, that I'd always have a place with them. Diane's face hardened. "Did you sign anything? Any legal agreement?" I shook my head. "He's my son, Diane. I trusted him." The words hung in the air, foolish and painful. "We should check your accounts," Diane said gently. "Make sure they don't have access to anything else." My stomach knotted. I hadn't even considered that. Ethan was the one who set up my online banking after Harold died. He said it was for emergencies. I even gave Jenna my credit card for groceries and things for the kids. With trembling hands, I logged in on Diane's tablet. Relief washed over me when I saw my savings were still intact. But when I opened the credit card statement, that relief vanished. $3,200 at Nordstrom, $1,700 at a place called Sephora. Diane read over my shoulder. "Since when do you spend like this, Nancy?" "I didn't," I whispered, scrolling down the endless list of charges. Designer clothes, expensive makeup, dinners at restaurants I'd never even heard of. All within the past 3 weeks, just as I was preparing for surgery. The most recent charge was yesterday, $4,500 at a place called Elite Furniture Gallery. They were redecorating my room. The realization hit me like ice water. Everything fit. They had planned this, waiting until I was gone to replace my belongings. Diane's face burned with fury. "Ungrateful, shameless people. I need to cancel those cards," I cut in, an odd calm settling over me. It was the first moment of clarity I'd had since finding my suitcase at the door. I needed to put everything on pause. With Diane's help, I called the bank, reported the misuse, disputed the charges, and froze every credit card immediately. "Ma'am, this will prevent any new charges from being approved," the bank representative warned. "Good," I answered firmly. "That's exactly what I want." After I hung up, I collapsed into the chair, exhausted. But inside me, a tiny spark flickered. They might have tossed me out like trash, but I still had the power to make choices. "So what now?" Diane squeezed my hand. "I need to get my things back," I said. "My photo albums, Harold's watch, my mother's dishes, they're still in that house." "We'll figure it out," Diane promised. "But first, you need to heal. Doctor's orders." Of course, she was right. My body needed time to recover from surgery, but I knew my heart would take much longer. The next day, the phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. My heart leapt. Maybe he had come to his senses. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to beg me to come home. I answered on the second ring. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice tight, controlled. "Not the voice of a repentant son. There's some problem with your credit cards." "No." "Not a single, 'How are you after surgery?' Not a single, 'I'm sorry for leaving you outside.' Just concern about the credit cards." "Yes," I said, surprised at the firmness of my own voice. I froze them. "Jenna was trying to buy food for the kids," he said, irritation growing. The card was declined. I stared at the phone, my voice shaking as I asked, was Jenna also buying food at Nordstrom and Furniture Gallery, or was that something else? Another long silence on the line. Then Ethan spoke. "Mom, you told Jenna she could use those cards for emergencies and necessities." I corrected him instantly. "Not for thousands of dollars on who knows what." I heard his sharp inhale. "Look, I don't have time for this right now. Just unfreeze the cards. We can talk about spending limits later." The indifference in his voice lit a slow fire inside me, one that had been smoldering since I first saw that sticky note. "No, Ethan," I said softly but firmly. "I don't think I will." "What did you say?" His surprise almost made me laugh. "You made it clear I'm no longer part of your home," I continued, each word heavy. "So Jenna will have to find another way to pay for her whims. Mom, be reasonable. I was reasonable when I sold my house to help you expand yours." I cut him off. "I was reasonable when I watched your children every day so you and Jenna could pursue your careers. I was reasonable when I cooked, cleaned, and made myself useful. And what did all that reasonableness get me, Ethan?" Silence again. "This isn't the right time to talk about this." "With you, it's never the right time," I said, feeling the truth settle on my chest. "Goodbye, Ethan." I hung up with a trembling hand, but with a resolve stronger than ever. In the doorway, Diane watched me with a small smile. "Well, look who finally found her voice," she said. I managed a weak smile back. "Freezing the cards is only the beginning," I said. "I need to find out what else they've done with my money." Just then, my phone buzzed with a message. "Mom, this is childish. Call me when you're ready to act like an adult." I showed Diane the text, and she let out a disbelieving laugh. "It's ironic he called you childish," Diane muttered. I set the phone down, a strange calm seeping into me. The shock and the pain were still there, but something new was taking shape step by step, decision by decision. They had taken my home, my safety, my place in the family, but I would not let them take anything else. Not a single dime, not an ounce of my dignity. A week passed, with no word from Ethan. The stitches from my surgery were healing, but the wound of betrayal was still raw. Diane was my lifeline, but I couldn't stay with her forever. I had to get my things back and decide what came next. "I'm coming with you," Diane said the moment I mentioned returning to Ethan's house. "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is," she cut me off, grabbing her car keys. "They won't slam the door in your face if there's a witness." The drive to the house I had called home for 3 years felt unfamiliar. When we pulled up, I saw that Jenna's luxury SUV was gone, but Ethan's sedan sat in the driveway. "Perfect," Diane whispered. "Maybe we can talk to him without her poisoning the air." My legs felt heavy as I walked up the path. The flower beds I once tended were neglected now. I rang the bell, my heart pounding. Ethan opened the door, surprise flashing across his face before it closed down again. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, he," said, glancing at Diane, then back at me. "I didn't expect you." "Of course not," I answered, finding strength in Diane's steady presence. "I'm here for my things, my personal belongings." He hesitated for a beat, then stepped aside. "Jenna's not here. She took the kids to her mother's." The house looked different. The furniture was changed, a sleek sectional sofa filling the living room, probably from that furniture gallery charge. "My things are in the upstairs room," I said, starting for the stairs. "Actually," Ethan cleared his throat, "we moved some of it. Jenna uses that room as her office now." A chill slid down my spine. "Then where are my things?" "Mostly in boxes in the garage," Ethan said, avoiding my eyes. "Jenna thought it would be easier for you that way." Diane snorted with open disdain. "Did she now?" We followed him to the garage, where cardboard boxes lined the wall. My chest tightened as I opened the first one, clothes folded hastily. The second held books and a few personal items. But as I kept searching, my throat closed. "Where are my family photos? Harold's watch? My mother's jewelry?" Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know." Jenna packed everything. "They're not here," I said, my voice rising. "My mother's china, our family heirlooms." "Mom, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down." The fury startled even me. "Those things can't be replaced. They are my memories, my life." Diane stepped forward. "Ethan, this is unacceptable. Those are Nancy's personal belongings." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking more like a scolded boy than a grown man. "I'll talk to Jenna. Maybe she put them somewhere else." "I want to check the attic now," I said firmly. He hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. I went straight up, remembering I'd stored some older things there. As I climbed, Ethan's phone rang downstairs. He answered in a whisper. The attic was dusty and dark, but I knew exactly where the old trunks were. Relief washed over me when I saw them still there. Opening the largest, I found our wedding album, Harold's military medals, and several family photo albums. At least those precious memories had escaped Jenna's reach. Then Ethan's voice drifted up the stairs. "No, she just showed up. Yes, with that friend. I know we agreed, but she's still my mother. Jenna, that's not fair. We agreed we'd wait until after the house sold before telling her about the nursing home. No, I haven't told her. She just had surgery, for God's sake." My blood ran cold. Nursing home. Selling the house. I moved closer to the stairwell, straining to hear. "The realtor says we can get at least $650,000 after the renovations. Enough to pay off the debts and put a down payment on the lake house. Yes, her money made it possible, but she agreed it was an investment." My knees nearly buckled. They were planning to sell the house I'd poured my life savings into, to move to a lakefront property, and they planned to put me in a nursing home. I must have made some noise, because Ethan suddenly went quiet. "I have to go." She might have heard. I bent over the trunk, head spinning, as Ethan's footsteps came closer. I pretended to focus on the photo albums, willing my hands to stop shaking. "Mom? What? Did you find what you needed?" His voice was tight. "Some of it," I said, unsure I could manage more. He helped me carry the boxes down. The silence between us was thick and suffocating in the garage. Diane methodically checked the remaining boxes. "Ethan," I said finally, "when were you planning to tell me about selling the house?" His face paled. "So you heard." "Yes, I heard. And I also know about the nursing home you picked for me." My voice rang firm, though inside I was reeling. "Were you ever—" "I'm going to ask me what I thought about that?" At least he had the decency to look ashamed. "Mom, it's not what you think. We just thought, with your health—" "My gallbladder surgery," I cut in. "Not an excuse to lock me away in a nursing home. I'm 68, not 98. It was Jenna's idea. Jenna's idea," I echoed bitterly. "And you just went along with it, didn't you? Like when you threw me out of the house I helped build." "It's not your house," Ethan snapped, a flash of defiance in his eyes. "Your name isn't on the deed." The words hit like a slap. He was right. No matter how much money I had given, I had no legal claim. I had trusted my son, and that trust had become my ruin. Diane cut in, her voice icy. "We'll be taking these boxes right now. And Ethan, you'd better find her valuables before we call the police." As we loaded the boxes into Diane's car, I glanced back through the open garage door. On Ethan's desk lay a folder for Maplewood Residence Nursing Home, along with real estate listings. They had planned it all for months, throwing me out, the nursing home, the lake house. Every detail calculated behind my back. The betrayal stabbed so deep I could hardly breathe as the car pulled away. But under the pain, something fierce was stirring, a determination so strong it startled me. They had taken everything, but I would not let them dictate my fate again. Never. "You can stay with me as long as you need," Diane said as we unloaded the boxes. "I mean it, Nancy." I thanked her from the bottom of my heart, but I knew it wasn't a permanent solution. Her one-bedroom apartment was barely enough for her, let alone both of us. And more than that, I needed to stand on my own. "I'm more grateful than you realize," I told her, "but I have to handle this myself." The next morning I scheduled an appointment at the bank. Maurice Walker had been my financial advisor since. Harold passed, and his face showed real shock as I told him what had happened. "I'm so sorry, Nancy," he said, scanning my accounts. "The good news is, your pension and Social Security are still being deposited regularly, and your main savings account is untouched." But when it came to the money I had poured into Ethan's house, his expression grew heavy. There was no legal agreement. Legally, it's considered a gift. We might be able to try something, but it'll be very difficult. I nodded, already braced for that. Then I need to focus on moving forward. What options do I have for housing? We spent nearly an hour going over the numbers. Between pension and Social Security, I had about $2,400 a month. Not a fortune, but enough to rent a modest apartment and cover basics if I was careful. And there's this, Maurice said, opening an account I had nearly forgotten Harold's life insurance policy. The investments have grown. Right now it's about $42,000. A wave of gratitude for Harold swept over me. Even in death, he was still providing for me. This gives you options, Maurice continued. You could use part as a deposit for housing and essentials, and keep the rest as a safety net. When I left the bank, I carried both loss and hope inside me. I had less than I thought I would at this age, but more than many others in my position. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into the search for a place. Diane came with me, driving me to appointments, comparing prices, lifting me when despair crept in. Finally, we found a 1-bedroom apartment in a senior living community, not fancy but clean, with a small balcony for plants, and best of all, affordable. Perfect, Diane said as we stepped inside. Look, they even have a community garden and weekly card games in the lounge. I signed the lease that very day, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment the first I'd about felt since finding my suitcase outside Ethan's door. This time, I was taking control of my life instead of being swept away by it. Moving in was another challenge. With limited funds, I couldn't replace everything I'd left behind. But Diane's church group generously donated a sturdy old sofa, a small dining table, and a comfortable armchair. I bought myself a brand new mattress with sheets and pillows. That was the one luxury I wouldn't compromise on. Bit by bit, the little apartment began to feel like mine. The phone stayed silent. No calls from Ethan, no messages asking how I was. Only silence. I told myself it was better that way, a clean break. But at night, in the quiet, when the place still felt unfamiliar, my thoughts turned to the grandchildren. What would Ethan tell them about my sudden disappearance? 3 weeks after moving in, I was arranging the photo albums I'd salvaged when the phone rang. Ethan's name lit up the screen. My heart jolted. A treacherous spark of hope flared, even though I didn't want it to. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound calm. "Mom." His voice was cold, businesslike. "We need to talk about your credit cards." Not a word of concern, not an apology, just money. "What about them?" I asked. The flicker of hope died. "They're still frozen. Jenna needs to buy things for the kids." "They'll stay frozen, Ethan," I cut in, surprised by the steel in my tone. "I live on a fixed income now. I can't bankroll Jenna's luxuries anymore." A long silence. "Mom, be reasonable. We're family." The word family hit like a slap. "Family," I repeated. "Is that what you call it when you threw me out after surgery? When you planned to sell the house I paid for and lock me away in a nursing home? You don't understand." "No, you're the one who doesn't understand," I interrupted. "I trusted you with everything I had, Ethan. My home, my money, my heart. And you betrayed it all. You won't get another dime from me." His voice turned cold. "Then there's nothing more to say." "You're right," I said, calm washing over me. "There isn't. Goodbye, Ethan." I hung up and sank into my donated armchair, looking around at the modest but dignified apartment. It wasn't the old age I had imagined, but it was mine. The call hurt, but it brought clarity. Ethan hadn't called to reconcile. He'd only called for money. That weekend, I noticed a flyer posted in the lounge. Senior Support Group, Life's Turning Points. Something nudged me to go. The following Tuesday, I walked into a sunlit room at the community center, where 6 seniors sat in a circle. The facilitator, also named Nancy, greeted me warmly. "Would you like to introduce yourself and share why you came?" I hesitated, then began. "My name is Nancy. A month ago, my son and daughter-in-law locked me out of their house right after my surgery. I had sold my home to help them, and then—" My voice cracked, but I kept going. "They decided I wasn't worth anything to them anymore." The sympathetic eyes around me gave me strength. I told it all: the betrayal, the plan to put me in a nursing home, the frozen credit cards, the new apartment. As I spoke, I realized it was the first time I'd told the story from beginning to end, and something inside me shifted. The shame I'd been carrying, the thought that I must have done something wrong to deserve it, slowly melted away. "Thank you for sharing," the facilitator said when I finished. "Sadly, financial abuse of older adults often comes from family. What you went through is more common than people realize." A silver-haired woman named Ophelia reached for my hand. "My daughter did the same thing," she confessed. "It took me years to rebuild, but I did it. You will too." As the meeting went on, people shared their own stories, some like mine, some different but equally painful. By the time we paused for coffee and cookies, a new feeling bloomed in me, a sense of belonging. These people understood me. No judgment, no pity. By the end, I had 3 new phone numbers and an invitation to lunch from Ophelia and another woman named Margaret. Back at my apartment, I stood on the little balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in bright orange and pink. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future different from what I'd planned. Not worse, just different. A future where I chose for myself, built new friendships, and learned to trust again cautiously in my own time. The wound of Ethan's betrayal was still deep, but standing there in the fading light, I felt something stirring inside me, not just the will to survive, but the capacity to bloom. 6 months passed. Fall gave way to winter, then to the gentleness of spring. My little apartment had become a real home, decorated with cherished photos and a few carefully chosen new pieces. The support group became part of my life. Ophelia and Margaret were now close friends. We met weekly for coffee, card games, or walks in the park when the weather was kind. My life found a rhythm of peace until the day an unexpected letter arrived from a real estate company. "Congratulations on your sale." The opening line was followed by an address I knew instantly. Ethan's house. My hands trembled as I read on. The letter was addressed to me as a co-owner, informing me the house had sold for $685,000. I went cold. They had done it. They sold the house I had poured every cent of my savings into, and somehow they had even used my name in the transaction. I called Diane immediately. "They sold the house," I said, my voice shaking. "And somehow my name is on the paperwork." "That's impossible," Diane exclaimed. "Your name wasn't on the deed. Unless they forged your signature. Nancy, you need a lawyer right away." The next day I sat across from Patricia Winters, an elder law attorney Ophelia had recommended. She studied the letter, her brows knitting tighter. "This is very serious," Patricia said. "They cannot legally sell the house in your name as a co-owner unless there's paperwork you signed. Did you ever sign anything related to the house?" I thought back. Ethan gave me some documents when I first moved in. He said they were tax-related, about the money I contributed. Patricia's nod was grim. I want to investigate further. In the meantime, I suggest we schedule a meeting with Ethan and Jenna. If they committed fraud, they need to know there will be consequences. The thought of facing them unsettled me, but it also sparked a strange anticipation. Over the past months, I had slowly rebuilt my life, regained my strength. Maybe it was time to show them who I had become. Patricia helped me draft a formal letter requesting a meeting, sent by certified mail so they couldn't deny it. 3 days later, Ethan called. "What is this about, Mom?" His voice was tight. "Why did you drag a lawyer into this?" "You know why," I answered calmly. "The sale of the house." Silence. "That was our business, not yours." "Not according to the letter I received. And my name appeared in a transaction I never knew about or agreed to." He sighed heavily. "Fine, we can meet, but no lawyers. This is family." The moment he called it family was the moment I knew that illusion had ended the day he left my suitcase at the door. "Patricia will be there," I said firmly, "and I suggest you bring your lawyer, too." We agreed to meet in a neutral place, a private room at a local restaurant. In the days leading up to it, I wavered between anxiety and fierce resolve. The night before, Ophelia called me. "Remember, you're not just fighting for money, you're fighting for dignity. Don't let them see you waver." The next morning, I put on a blue dress Diane had always said brought out my eyes. I brushed my hair carefully, added light makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the confident woman staring back. 6 months earlier, I had been broken, betrayed, and homeless. Now I was steady, ready to face the ones who had tried to destroy me. Patricia drove us and reminded me on the way, let them speak first. People say more than they should when they're on the defensive. Ethan and Jenna were already seated when we arrived. Along with a thin man, Patricia instantly recognized James Porter, a local real estate lawyer. Jenna looked strained, her usual polished exterior worn down. Ethan avoided my eyes. "Thank you all for coming," Patricia began, setting a folder on the table. "We're here to discuss the sale of the property on Maplewood Drive, specifically my client's financial stake in that home." James Porter cleared his throat. "My clients maintain that Mrs. Nancy has no legal ownership of the house. The money she provided was a gift, as stated here." He slid a document across the table. Patricia glanced at it before replying. "This document only acknowledges a financial contribution. It does not classify it as a gift under legal terms. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mrs. Nancy's name was used in the sale without her knowledge or consent." Ethan shifted uneasily. Jenna went pale. "Then how do you explain this letter?" Patricia placed the real estate company's notice on the table. "That was an administrative error," James said quickly. "They were told Mrs. Nancy had contributed to renovations and mistakenly added her name." "A curious error," Patricia pressed, pulling out another sheet. "Especially since my client's signature appears in preliminary paperwork, a signature she insists she never made." The room fell silent. Jenna's hands shook, Ethan's face drained of color. "These are serious allegations," James said, struggling for composure. "Are you suggesting my client's forged her signature?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Patricia replied coolly. "I'm stating facts. Either we go to court and make them public, or we reach a fair settlement today." At last Ethan spoke, his voice tense. "What do you want?" For the first time I looked straight into his eyes, the boy I had raised, the man who had betrayed me so deeply. A flicker of softness stirred not weakness, but the realization that he wasn't a monster, only weak, swayed by Jenna's hunger for comfort, willing to sacrifice his own mother to maintain it. "I want fairness," I said. "I put in $178,000 into that home. I want it returned, with interest." Jenna choked out. "That's outrageous." I turned to her. "Was it a gift when you used my credit cards without asking? Was it a gift when you stuffed my belongings into boxes and dumped them in the garage? Was it a gift when you secretly planned to put me in a nursing home?" Her face burned red. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut her off, my voice hard. "You treated me like an ATM and a babysitter, and when I needed care after surgery, you discarded me." Ethan stared down at the table. "It wasn't like that, Mom." "Then explain it, Ethan. Explain how a son locks his mother out right after she's discharged from the hospital." He had no words. Patricia steered us back to business. "My client will accept reimbursement of her original investment with 6% interest, totaling about $188,680. Given the circumstances, that's more than fair." James leaned in to whisper with Ethan and Jenna before standing. "My clients are willing to settle for $150,000 to resolve this matter fully." Patricia looked to me. I considered it, then nodded. The money wasn't the point. What mattered was that the truth had been recognized. "We accept," Patricia declared, "on the condition of payment within 7 days and both parties signing a confidentiality agreement." As Patricia and James finalized the details, I leaned back in my chair, a strange peace settling over me. Money couldn't heal betrayal, but it could secure my future. 1 year after being thrown out of what I thought would be my forever home, I stood in the kitchen of my new bakery. The air was filled with the scent of cinnamon and vanilla, stirring sweet memories. Morning light poured through the window, bathing the freshly painted walls and gleaming counters in gold. "Perfect," Dottie said, as she slid a tray of fresh blueberry muffins into the display case. "I still can't believe we did it." I smiled at my lifelong friend, arranging pastries like treasures. 6 months earlier, when I received the settlement from Ethan and Jenna, Diane had joked that my apple pie could sell faster than anything in town. What had started as a joke turned into a serious discussion, then into a business plan, and now into reality. "I couldn't have done this without you," I said, straightening my apron. At 69, I had never imagined opening a store. Yet here I was, co-owner of a little bakery specializing in traditional desserts. The bell over the door jingled, and Eleanor walked in with Margaret and a few others from my support group. "It's beautiful, Nancy," Eleanor exclaimed. "Absolutely perfect." Margaret handed me a small potted plant, a miniature apple tree for new beginnings. Tears welled in my eyes as I accepted it. Thank you, all of you. The past year had transformed my life in ways I never expected. Money gave me choices, but friendship had saved me. Our opening day was a modest success. Curious neighbors stopped by, drawn in by the hand-painted sign and the scent of fresh pastries. By noon we had sold half our stock, and by closing time the cases were nearly empty. "I'd call that a victory," Diane said as we counted the day's earnings. I nodded, exhausted but deeply content. This bakery was more than a job, it was proof that life can start over at any age. That betrayal doesn't have to be the end. In the weeks that followed, life found its rhythm. I rose before dawn, finding peace in the quiet of the ovens, then welcomed customers all day. The work was tiring, but it gave me purpose, and the steady praise for my desserts fed my spirit in a way I hadn't realized I needed. 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the bell rang again. I looked up from a tray of lemon tarts and saw Ethan standing in the doorway, awkward and hesitant. My heart lurched. We hadn't spoken since the settlement. He looked thinner. New lines etched into his face, and a storm of emotions churned inside me. Love, pain, anger, and a sharp ache of pity. "Mom." His voice was softer than the faint music playing in the shop. I wiped my hands on my apron. "Ethan, what a surprise." He shifted uneasily, glancing around at the warm space. "It looks nice, the bakery suits you." "Thank you," I replied evenly. "What brings you here?" He took a deep breath. "I'm in trouble, Mom." Of course he was. Why else come after all these months? I could already guess the reason. Not reconciliation, not remorse need, yet a part of me still wondered if he felt even a shred of pain. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "Financial," he admitted, eyes fixed on the floor. His voice cracked, dignity splintering with it. "Jenna left. She took the kids to Arizona. The money from the house is gone. I don't know exactly how she managed the finances." He let out a bitter, hollow laugh, no joy in it, only defeat. Ironic, isn't it? After everything he'd done, after leaving me out in the cold, I sat still, studying him like a stranger I had once dreamed was my son. I couldn't deny the sting of seeing him so gaunt, his face hollowed by life's weight, but my heart no longer rushed toward him the way it once had. The mother's instinct in me could no longer cover his wounds with bandages woven from forgiveness. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and to my own surprise it was true. It hurt especially for the children. "You must miss them." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Yes, so much. I'm trying to figure out how to get them back. But first I need—" He paused, swallowing hard, groping for words. "I need to start over." He finally looked straight at me, searching for the unconditional softness I once gave so freely. Maybe he expected the woman who always said yes, even when the healthiest answer was no. "I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything, not after what I did. But I don't know who else to turn to." Once, those words would have undone me. I would have rushed to him, wide open like an old door that never closes. But that woman was gone. The Nancy who sold her house for a fantasy of family, who stayed quiet in the kitchen, who endured and endured, she no longer existed. "What exactly do you want, Ethan?" I asked, my voice not harsh but firm, drawing a line. He shifted, eyes down again. "Alone! Just until I can sell the lake house and find something cheaper. Nothing big, just enough to get out of the hole." The lake house. The dream they had wanted to buy with the money from selling the home I helped build, where every coat of paint and every tile carried pieces of my savings and blind trust. Bitterness rose, but I took a steady breath. "I can't do that." I answered softly but firmly. I wasn't trembling anymore. I wasn't uncertain. His face collapsed as if my refusal had torn it apart. "Mom, please. I understand why you're angry." "This isn't about anger, Ethan," I interrupted. "It's about respect, about boundaries, about self-love, about not repeating what hurt me before." We sat in silence, because sometimes the firmest words are spoken quietly. "It's about learning from what happened," I breathed in. "But I can offer you something else." He looked up. "What?" "A job," I said. "We need help with deliveries, lifting things. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work." He stared at me, his voice almost breaking. You'd hire me? After everything?" "Yes," I said simply, "not because you deserve it, but because I choose to." He sat there a long time thinking, "When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 5 a.m. We start baking early." He nodded slowly. "All right, thank you, Mom." When Ethan left, Diane slipped in from the back door, where she had discreetly kept her distance. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, worry etched on her face. "Not sure," I admitted, "but it feels right. Not for him, for me." Giving Ethan a job instead of money was as much about my healing as his. I was setting a boundary, holding on to my dignity, while still leaving a small door open for reconciliation. 2 months later, Ethan was still showing up each morning, making deliveries, washing dishes, slowly learning the ropes of the bakery. Our relationship was cautious, built on neutral conversations. No talk of Jenna, no mention of the past. Not exactly forgiveness, but a fragile bridge nonetheless. One warm Sunday afternoon, my day off, I sat on my balcony tending to my pots of herbs. The little apple tree my friends had given me had borne its first tiny fruit. Just one small apple, but a victory. My phone rang and I smiled at Diane's name on the screen. "So how was the date?" I teased. She laughed happily, telling me about dinner with Richard, a widower she'd met at the community garden. "Wonderful. But I'm calling to remind you dinner tonight. Richard's bringing his friend William." I laughed. "Still trying to set me up?" Diane insisted. "William's a good man. Retired English teacher, also widowed. Loves baking, loves gardening, and has the kindest eyes I've ever seen." "All right, I'll come," I promised, surprised at how much I was actually looking forward to it. After hanging up, I looked around my little apartment. Not spacious, not fancy, but warm and lovely. Green plants thriving, photos of new friends mixed with old memories. This wasn't the future I once pictured for myself. But different doesn't mean worse. In fact, it was richer. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me had forced me to discover a strength I never knew I had. It stripped away illusions and gave me real connections. It took false security and handed me true freedom. I plucked the tiny apple from my tree. Its skin wasn't perfect, lopsided, and smaller than any in the store. But it was sweet, full of promise, just like my new life. Sometimes betrayal comes in the voices most familiar, the faces we once kissed, the hands we once held with pride. It isn't always a stranger in the dark, it's the child you raised, the daughter-in-law you welcomed into your home, the family you thought unbreakable. And when it happens, when your heart is shattered in the place you felt safest, the first feeling is shame, as if you had done something wrong, as if your love was a mistake. But I learned that shame was never mine to carry. The mistake wasn't in loving too much, it was in letting my generosity be twisted into obligation. It took a surgery, a suitcase on the doorstep, and the scars of a silent eviction to teach me that love never justifies abuse. That even when they've taken everything, your home, your family, your history, you can still rise. You can rebuild, not as you were before, but stronger, wiser, freer. The message I want to leave you with is clear. Your worth is not defined by what others do to you, but by what you choose to do afterward. When you face abandonment, when you realize you've been used, don't let rage consume you or fear paralyze you. Do what I did. Sit down, cry if you need to, then start moving your feet, step by step. You don't need all the answers, you just need to begin. If you've been betrayed, discarded like you're invisible, breathe. Take stock of what you still have. Your voice, your story, your hands, your dignity. And from there, rise. Freeze the cards if you must. Ask for help. Demand justice. Find new connections, new beginnings, new dreams. Because there is life after abandonment. There is home after loss. There is purpose, even when the future you imagined has vanished. And above all, there is power within you, even when others try to steal it away. Not everyone will respond as I did. Some will fight harder. Some will reconcile sooner. Some will walk away immediately. But whatever your path, let it be guided by respect for yourself. Because forgiving doesn't mean allowing more harm. And loving doesn't mean enduring everything. Looking back, I see that family love can be the greatest gift, but without respect and honesty, it can also be the deepest wound. I lost my house. I lost my trust in those I loved most. But I found myself, and I found the strength to rise and start again. And maybe that, after all, is the truest gift life could give me. Perhaps we all need to stumble once to realize that love doesn't mean accepting pain, and forgiveness doesn't mean letting others cross our boundaries again. I learned how to set limits, how to love myself more, and only then could I give love in a healthier way. And you, what about you? If you were in my place, would you choose forgiveness, confrontation, or your own path forward? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched you in any way, stay with me so we can continue to share, to listen, and to learn from both the hurt and the hope. Because I believe that in this community, none of us ever have to walk alone.